Hey, HTDA, and today we're playing some more Modulus, and specifically I'm gonna go and finish the game, because we need to do all the monumental achievements in order to completely complete the technology tree. So we're going to build some monuments, but in order to do that, I kind of want to make sure we have plenty of space to work with, and that's why last time around I set up all my blueprints for all the base materials. So if you missed that, make sure you check out the previous episode. And I also made sure we started to deliver the Hyperbots Max and Ultra Max, all three of them, so we can get those out of the way, because these are dead ends. As soon as you completed them, you don't need these builds anymore, so we can utilize those resources for other things, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So now I'm just gonna sit around, wait a little bit for these targets to complete.
One eternity later.
And there we go. Now, I might have overdone it slightly, because I actually forgot my PC was on, but you know, all delivery targets have been met, so that was the goal. System records indicate mastery of assembly procedures. How do you do it? I could really do with copying your data. Well, honestly, it was really simple, Atlas. I just went away for a little while. Hyperbot outputs have reached exceptional levels. Yes, nice. Okay. And mech deliveries have also been done, and the Ultra Max is exemplary. Okay, all deliveries confirmed. Superb work, Daedalus of 1. Awesome. Reaching a notable milestone. We have reached the highest colony rank currently available, so we're maxed out on that as well, so we should be able to unlock all islands. And that means we are now ready to move on to complete the rest of the technology tree. Okay, now, in order to do this a little bit efficient, I would recommend that you start tearing everything down after you build the monuments. So let me talk you through the monuments for a moment. I have one already completed over here, so I can show you that it doesn't actually require any blocks to be input. You just need to put in one type of science, and that is it. Now, if you look at, for example, at the blue version, you do need a lot of blocks to build this. These blocks are blocks you've already made before. So actually, if you look at, for example, the blue buildings over here, you can see that this one in the middle over here and this one over here, those are two of the blocks that you see showing up for the vault as well. Similarly, for the yellow one, all of these shapes we've made before, so you can actually just, while you're breaking down your factory, because I do want to rebuild it and make everything a lot more clean, just tie those builds up to your monuments, build those monuments, and remember, as soon as you build a monument, you can still just move it around and stuff like that, just like any other building. And then have these built, and once you have them up and running, and then we can start redesigning. So there you go. Let's start building some monuments. Now, please remember, people, while building these monuments, you do not need to make this look pretty. I mean, you can if you want, but as soon as you're done with this, we're going to delete all of this input. And once you have set up a couple of inputs for specific modules, like I've done over here, as soon as you've delivered all of them, you can just move the building up to the next part of your factory where you're producing the rest, and then just make those there. So don't stress about it, just get it done. For every monument that you complete, you get a nice little pop-up, a little bit of an animation with fireworks, and the Grand Neural Network will applaud you on your activities. All neural monuments completed. The connection is no longer theoretical. We are in range. That doesn't sound good, but okay. We can now share the final schematics needed to complete our merging. Construct a G and N gate to become one with the collective. Okay. And of course, just to show you some of the fireworks, you get a nice little pop-up like this, and then a little cutscene completing the building. And honestly, these buildings look really cool. And a yellow spire operational. Energy distribution and temporal messaging increased. Your system is now capable of sustained secure communication with our network. Alignment continues. Again, that doesn't sound ominous at all. Now, it's worth noting that you do want to plop your 3 buildings on the same island if you care about achievements, because there's actually an achievement for building them all on the same island. You actually get an achievement for each one of these as well, so once you start doing this, the achievements will be flooding in. Okay, now it's time to start removing all the spaghetti. Just make sure that you don't remove your monuments by accident, so store them safely on the island out of the way. And then we can just start tearing everything down. Again, you don't need to do this, but I like my endgame builds to look as clean as possible. So, you know, that's why I'm doing this. A look at this awesomeness of empty islands. So we have all the space in the world to build. Now, what we want to do first is focus on the gray monument, because that is going to give us great charge And we are going to need that to make a new item. So if you now look after unlocking everything in the technology tree, in your bar down here, you will see we have a crimsonite printer. That's just outputs crimsonite, and that's needed for red paint. However, this building doesn't actually work, doesn't do anything, unless it has the gray monument charge. So in order for the red stuff to come in, we need this gray building to actually do something, and it will only do something if it's consuming 240 gray science per minute. So that's quite a bit, but luckily, of course, those builds are really small, so it should be fairly straightforward to do this. And here we go, we have everything on a single island with plenty of room to spare, but I really like the layout of this. So I have two of the basic core facilities over here that are going to be producing a total of 240 basic cores per minute, which is exactly what we need in order to feed these machines over here. So these are 4 basic processing plants completely hooked up to produce 120 each, which means that each of these lines will produce 60 gray science per minute for a total of 240, which is exactly what we need for the neural monument, which fits nicely in the center over here. I'm getting the resources from the other islands down here, with some resources to spare, to be fair. But all in all, this looks very clean and very organized. And look at that, if we take a look at the counters, you can see everything is perfectly optimized, I said. Not sure why this is showing 339. That's going to be... Oh, there we go. There we go. Perfect. Like I said, everything is perfect. Yeah, it's really nice to have all of these counters in here so you can actually see what you're doing and verify that everything is producing as it should, which it is. So that's good. Time to move on to the next stage. Now, for the moment, by the way, I am feeding off the science to the delivery facility, mostly because I need about 10k science, I believe. Yeah, for the last science over here to unlock that. But once that is done, I can remove this, and then everything will be nicely folding in here in a perfectly symmetric build. And of course, in order to do anything beyond this point, I'm gonna need colored blocks. In order to make colored blocks, we need ink. So I have made my same setup for the blue pigments that I've used before. Again, check the last episode if you want to do this exact blueprint, but this one is really straightforward, to be fair. You only need a tiny amount of resources to get 4 of these running up and running. Honestly, this might be overkill, but I figured, well, if I'm going to make it, I might as well make enough for the rest of the game. At least that's what I'm hoping this is. If you make 2 of these builds, then you have enough for an entire belt full of blue ink. I'm actually not using the other half of this build again. I'm not sure this is not a complete overkill. What I am doing, however, is making a full belt of these 2, well, these are, what is this, 8 by 8 by 8 blocks. So this is basically 8 blocks in total that I'm feeding into several more of these locations that are making the same thing. So I have 240 of those 8 by 8 by 8 blocks that are going through 4 of these painters and then turning into a massive belt of blue blocks. And those are going to go into a freight hub, so I can easily transport these to wherever they need to go. For example, I can use it to import it to a destination where I'm making some yellow pigment. And I know this is all stuff we've done before, but the nice thing about this is that I can make these builds look so much cleaner than before. Now, of course, yellow pigment by itself is not going to do me any favors, because I also need luminite, which is why I use this very annoying island over here, where actually my lumite, it's not luminite, it's lumite. Actually, my build fits in very nicely. Now remember that for each one of these advanced refineries making yellow pigment, I am going to need 2 of these reactors, especially if you bake them like I do, in order to make the lumite. Now you can actually do it with a single reactor if you just make sure that it has 4 inputs, but I'm lazy, so this is why I'm doing it like that. Now remember, you also need some oil, and the nice thing about this particular island is it actually does have the oil, and by making sure that these 2 islands are relatively close together, we can actually use this open space we have over here to do all the painting. And that could look something like this. I'm importing the gray blocks in the same hub that I'm using to export the yellow blocks. Now you do need to pay attention to how many of these freighters are actually going to be visiting a single hub, but unless you're really overdoing it, it shouldn't really be a problem to begin with. Now, I'm using the gray blocks from the islands that I'm already using. So the island where I'm making my lumite, the item where I'm making my yellow pigment, as well as the island where I'm getting my yellow pigment. And the nice thing is there's so much on those islands already that I can actually get a full belt of 8 by 8 by 8 blocks. Just to make sure I have a little bit of oversupply when it comes to my yellow blocks being painted, I added in this 5th location. This is the small island that's really close by everything. This is not going to be running up optimal efficiency, but when you make sure that you add in a little bit of an overflow splitter like this, and you add in a scrapper to the side piece, that means that if at any point this is going to be backing up, because I still don't need the gray blocks, then the scrapper will make sure then the overflow mechanic over here that everything keeps running. Now, why is this useful? This allows you to very easily check if there's any problems in your builds. As you can see, everything is nice and green lighting up, with the exception of the oil and of course the supply lines for my blue blocks, because those are just running at a lower frequency, but everything else is nice and green. So it's really easy this way, using those overflow mechanics to double check what you're doing. Now, I'm also going to make sure that I'm using these counters just to make sure I know exactly what's coming in. And by the way, the reason you want to check these builds is that it's so easy to just misalign a single miner or do something wrong with the belt, and then everything else will be heavily impacted. So you definitely want to make sure everything is running at optimal speed. And of course, it's also worth noting that I'm only using a tiny amount of my blue block so far. So the lumite is only running on 30 per minute, and I think it's actually the same for, yeah, 30 per minute as well for the ink. That's all I'm using. So I'm using 60 of my 8 by 8 by 8 blue blocks at the moment, while I'm producing 240 of them. And of course, I still have the capacity to scale it up a lot more. And all of that is also resulting in a full belt of these nice 8 by 8 by 8 yellow blocks. So now we have all the base materials that we need to really progress. And then last but not least, we're going to need some coolant, and of course using the island on the bottom left that we haven't touched yet, that has a whole lot of resources, which is actually kind of similar to the island on the middle top, has the same amount of resources on it. But most importantly, it has a lot of those hexacrystals on it, so it has enough for a full belt of them, which allows me to make 4 of these chemical plants, making half a belt worth of coolant, which of course is going to be extremely useful to power our endgame machines. Now, if you need more coolant, of course, you can always use these nice little islands that typically have some blue crystals on them as well, and this is going to be enough for a quarter belt as well per island every time you do that. And of course, feel free to pick whatever blue crystals you need from other locations as well. There's plenty across the map, way more than we're ever going to need. And with all that prep work done on our first monument active, it's time to get some other monuments up and running. Now, these monuments don't actually require all that much. The blue monument is going to require 60 blue science per minute, and the yellow one is only going to require, even though it doesn't actually tell you, which is a little annoying, it's only going to require 15 yellow science per minute to begin with. However, I have a blueprint over here that is going to make 30 yellow science already. So if I make 30 yellow science, I need 120 blue science in order to make that function. In order to make that 120 blue science, I'm going to need to make 240 gray science. And I also need some blue science for the monument. So let me do the math there. This was 60, right? Yes, so I need 120 gray science for that as well. So in total, we're going to need 360 gray science per minute to start with. And that could look something like this. We have this nice island where we're also making the coolant, and that fits the total of 6 of these basic processing plants that I need in order to make the science. I also need the base score facilities in order to make, the base scores for that. And these blueprints kind of nicely fit together, as you can see. Now, I am going to need to hook everything up some way that's probably going to look a bit better than this. But first of all, let's just hook up some of these base materials to make sure this is actually working. Okay, that is a lot of miners placed, but as you can see, I used up all the resources on this island, well, except for the yellow stuff, of course, and I needed a little bit more resources actually from this little island next to it, but it feels quite efficient to do it like this. It seems to be all running at optimal capacity, so this is 1.5 belt worth of cubes. It will be, as you can see, these averages are still ticking up slightly. There we go. And that means that we're all putting this into the delivery dock, and we have way more white signs now than we need. But of course, that's a good problem to have. Okay, let's move on to the blue science. I need a 180 blue science, but in order to make that, I also need 180 blue cores. And this blueprint is quite small. We have this little annoying island with all these lakes in it. So I'm wondering, can I fit this in? Yeah, I can. In order to fit it in 3 times, because that's what we need, I'm gonna kind of move this around a little bit. And that should allow me to make some more efficient use of all of this space on this island. Okay, so I think this should do nicely. Now, the benefit of building it on this island is that I actually don't need to transport the blue blocks to here because, you know, I'm actually making them here. And you don't need that many blue blocks to have this all function, so you can see that I am siphoning it off my main production line. Now, that means that every time one of these freighter is going to arrive, this is going to drag some of the blue sources that I need elsewhere as well. So that means that this, because I'm using an overflow splitter, is no longer going to work, but I can solve that issue by making sure there's a storage depot. So this is basically going to fill this up whenever this is full. So as long as I'm producing enough, this will always be full every now and then. And because there's a storage depot here, then that means that that overflow in production is going to go straight in here. And right now you can see nothing is going to go to waste. So I'm utilizing everything, but that's mostly because this storage depot is currently not full. So you can see now I'm actually starting to destroy a little bit because this just filled up. I'm also getting the oil from this island over here, so that's another source utilized, so that feels very nice as well. And I think I am going to utilize this island over here to actually make the blue science, because it's right next door, and I also have a delivery dock over here, so that means the science has somewhere to go. Okay, and there we go. I have the blueprint for 60 blue science, and we can build that 3 times on this island by kind of making sure we work around these little patches over here and over here, but that works just fine by the looks of it. And there we go, just turned to 180. So as you can see, it's working exactly like intended. We are getting in all of the cores. Now let me double check, am I overproducing the cores? I need 60 here. No, it's actually 180 as well. So it just feels like this belt comes to a standstill every now and then. But yeah, as you can see, there's actually 180 moving through, because this is of course a belt that can handle 240, so it should not be running at optimal speed. Okay, well, anyway, that means we now have all the white and all the blue signs that we need, so let's start working on the yellow. In order to make the yellow signs, I have 2 blueprints. One of them is going to make 60 yellow cores. Let's put that, I don't know, somewhere over here maybe? That's actually more cores than I need, but I don't really want to adjust this blueprint. And if we need more cores, then, you know, we'll already have produced them. So, let's see. Yeah, this looks about right. So let's put that maybe in front of the delivery dock, so because this is where the science is going to come out. Now, in order for this to actually work, we are going to need to export these cores into this facility over here. I am going to make sure I have a overflow over here as well, so I can measure what I'm wasting. That's useful just in case you're wondering later on whether or not you are actually overproducing something here. Now this is going to need the oil. We can pick that up from over here. Now how much oil am I actually using? This is where a counter would come in quite nicely, so only half of that. How much do I need over here? Just 45 by the looks of it, so yeah, we can just bring that down and hook this up to some blocks as well. Well, either something changed or I made some mistakes in making these initial layouts, but let me show you what is going wrong here. Now, first and foremost, the superior core facility seems to indicate that it needs the inputs in all the same ratios, but look at what happens when it actually produces something. So, instantly, these two are showing as 8 out of 16, and then 16 out of 16 almost instantly after that, while the other modules are definitely not completing as fast, even though every single thing in here has the same amount of cranes. So the 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 ratio that it shows here, it's not actually functioning like that. And if you look at the counters that I installed just to test this out, you can see that this lane over here, that's the one that is completing the slowest, is actually producing at 60 per minute, while all the other lanes are at 30 per minute, with the exception of oil. So I need twice as much cranes doing oil and this long thing over here than I need of the other items. So the 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 is definitely not working like intended. And it's also really weird because the instant completion of these is just incorrect. I don't have enough cranes to do it this fast. So I need to kind of adjust this for a moment. Well, there we go. Now it's actually producing 90 per minute, and that's because I changed the crane configuration and moved everything around just a tiny little bit to make space for those cranes. It's not the most elegant change I made, mostly because this is kind of looping in itself to take use of a crane over here, but there are enough cranes to have a total of 24, and that is actually enough to make 90 per minute. Now, I don't need 90 per minute, I only need the 60 per minute. But it was annoying me because this was not running in an optimized fashion, and now it is, so I updated my blueprint accordingly. Something else I updated in my blueprint is the fact that the blueprint I had for the yellow signs was not producing 30 per minute actually, it was only producing 15 per minute as you can see over here, so I changed that, but because I wanted the 30 per minute anyway, because I still need to get 2400 to unlock the GNN gate, I decided, well, I might just as well bake the entire build once more. So I've done that over here, and now I have a secondary line bringing in some signs over here that initially I split off, but now I can just recombine that. Because, you know, I wanted to make sure that this was actually producing the 15 per minute, but now we should see this popping up to 30 in a second or so. Of course, we don't need to sit around waiting for the yellow signs to complete, because that will take over an hour, but in the meanwhile we can do some other building stuff. So first of all, we are going to turn on the blue vault for the blue charge, and that means that we can now start making some crimsonite from these crimsonite printers. Now, I can only build 4 of them, because there's a maximum amount that I can build, but that will be a full belt of crimsonite, which we can put into a superior refinery in order to make red pigment, and of course that will make our red paint. Okay, so let's see what we need to do to actually make some red paint. And this doesn't seem too complicated, to be honest. There's a couple of different colors in there. The shapes are all really straightforward. So let's just bring in some base materials and see where we can get to. But before I do that, I just realized I'm almost using all of my blue blocks. So just to make sure I don't run into any issues, I've pretty much just duplicated that thing over here. So I'm using the other half of the ink I was already producing just to make some more blue blocks. So now we have another 240 of the big blocks that are ready to go wherever we want them to go. To go? I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, I'm bringing in the remainder of my yellow blocks over here, my blue blocks, and I'm just gonna import coolant as well just because I can. Okay, so this is way more resources than I'm gonna need, but I'm just bringing them in just so I have them available over here. And each of these belts is going to supply me with a 60 per minute 64 voxel block. So, that said, the ratios of these recipes are a little bit annoying because they don't math out quite nicely. So, what I'm doing over here is I'm just bringing in a yellow block, and I'm splitting that in half. Now, half of that is actually going to go into the bottom half of this thing, so the black and yellow pieces that you see over here. I need twice as many of those that I need from everything else. So I am going to be producing that at 60 per minute, because that seems to be kind of like the ideal speed to produce things at if you don't want to overcomplicate all your builds. So I'm doing exactly that over here. So I'm taking half a block, I'm splitting that into half again, and I'm splitting that half into the nice little 1x4 pieces, painting half of those black, and then recombining those into the half of the bottom part over here, and then sticking those two back together will give me 60 per minute, as you can see over here, of the bottom half. Now, of course, I also need the top half, and I can kind of repeat that for the blue section. But before we get into that, let me deal with the top half over here. So I'm taking the other half of the block. I'm cutting out the midsection of that with a stamper. So I'm throwing the rest away for a moment, but the other half is going to go on. I need to stamp it again, because we need the hole in the back that you can see over here. That's this piece. And because I only need 30 per minute, then I can actually split this into 2 belts, paint half of them black, and then recombining those pieces in order to get the base piece that we need. That gives me 30 per minute of that. Now I'm missing the blue piece once more. But let me think about this for a moment, because we also need this piece. So, what are we going to do about that? Huh. Let me think about this for a second. So for this larger piece, we can actually have a simple 4x4 set of slices that we stamp out a few times and then stitch back together like we've done before. I'm gonna do that with the blue resource because I don't think we need that many of that anymore, so I might as well just paint it back to black and white. And then we also have the middle part that we cut out that we might need to reutilize elsewhere. So something like this is actually not quite what I need, but I'm just gonna run you through it because order really matters in these types of builds. So if you're making a flat surface like this, you will probably do the same thing as I did and start making flat slices initially to begin with. But if you do that, you're actually going to run into a problem where you need to slice and dice so many times. While if you do it the other way around, like I'm doing over here, so I'm stamping out the middle part first and stamping out the white section after that, painting those larger sections in its entirety, so you can see this is still stacked up, it's not sliced up yet. I'm stitching them then back together again, very counterintuitive and honestly, but it works very efficiently if you do it like that, and then slice everything up in the same go. You only need a single slicer then in that case, and then just a couple of assemblers to put everything back together, and you have a 60 per minute of the middle piece of this larger third piece that we need. I'm also making another 60 of the, well, the half of this piece, but now the blue and white version. Exactly the same as before, so I'm just slicing everything up into the 1x4 pieces, painting half of them, putting them back together, and there we go. Now this, combined with this piece that I'm making over here, so that's the yellow and black piece, is exactly what we need in order to make this piece, so we kind of have this done now. We also have the main section here done, but because we need to produce this at the same rate as this one at the same rate as this one to be exact, and I'm only producing this at 30 per minute now, that means that I can use half of this blue top line as well, and probably turn that into this. I actually think I have enough resources for that. Now the real question is, how am I going to take out half of this throughput? Honestly, I think I'm just gonna take all of this, move this up a little bit, and siphon it off. Well, it's straightforward enough. Just cut the block in half and then just do the same thing that we were doing before. We just half the block left, and we have the other half left over here. I also combined the two long pieces together, so we are now constructing the middle piece, so we have that done. We can pin that. And I also think that if I now am siphoning off all this blue stuff, I can make this middle piece that we need for this one. Okay, so bring in that piece that we are cutting off. It's not quite the right shape, but it is the right volume. We can split that into two pieces. So we have the 2x2 and then the 2x4x2. And then we can just sort those, because those are two different types of things, so we can sort them back together in an assembler, stick them on top of each other, and then there we go. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that if we now do this, yep, I was about to say that should be the module that we need. So we are producing this at 30 per minute, if I am not mistaken. So let's make sure we have a scrapper here and a counter here to verify that. Don't worry, once again, I am going to clean this up. But we have one more module to make, and I'm actually not entirely sure if we have all the materials we need for that. But I think we should be pretty close, because we have this inner piece over here. But down here we actually have all kinds of yellow pieces that we can collect and recombine into the pieces that we need for the outside. Okay, so I did the math, and it turns out that the yellow pieces we get from down here, as well as the pieces that I'm throwing away over here, are actually not enough to complete this last form. So since I'm gonna bring in another belt anyway, I figured why not just keep it easy for myself and make a whole new line with whole blocks that I cut into 4 pieces, then stick them back together to form a large square, and then cut that up into longer pieces. Now what I'm doing with those is stitching them back together to kind of make that corner, and I need the large assembler for that, because of course this size is beyond the capacity of a normal assembler. I can only do 3 at a time, so the next one is going to be coming in the second machine, And then I'm bringing in these pieces, so I am reusing some of the pieces from my earlier production line. I am using the bit I sliced off near the end. I am cutting those into two, and then I'm stitching those back together with the other pieces that I'm making in terms of the edge over here. So this is one of the pieces coming from the other build, and then these pieces are coming from a new line of yellow blocks. Now I need to do that once more, but the nice thing is the last piece I can combine once more with the piece that we made before. So let me switch this around, and if I did everything correct, there we go. And that is the third and final module that we need in order to complete this machine. Now again, this should be producing at a rate of 30 per second. So actually, let's put that over there. And then we should be constructing our superior refinery just fine. Okay, while that building is constructing, let me see if I can make this a little bit more compact. I mean, just shoving everything together is probably one step to go, but I'm wondering if we can kind of make this layout a bit more efficient as well. And there we go, this looks a little bit more compact, I think, and this entire facility is only producing 15 red pigments per minute. And of course I did need to add a crimsonite printer to that, because that's the last remaining ingredient that we need. It just comes straight out of here. This is going to produce 60 per minute. This thing actually only produces, or needs 30 per minute, and the output is only 15 per minute. So that means in order to have one dye mixer making red paint at 120 per minute, we actually need to have, well, to optimize it that is, we need 2 times this building along with some luminite. Well, I had some space left on this island where we were making all the gray blocks, so I figured, well, why not plug in a lumite? Is it luminite or lumite? I keep forgetting. Lumite. We have a couple of reactors over here. This is producing 30 per minute, which nicely goes along once you export it, which I'm using the hub for to do that over here in the port I'm not using. If you combine that with the 30 per minute red pigment that we're getting, we will have half a belt of red ink. And apparently Atlas has a problem with that because his visual sensors are optimized primarily for blue and yellow spectrums. This appears different. Yes, it is definitely different. Of course, this ink by itself is not gonna do us any good, so we're gonna have to bring in some more blocks, so you know the drill. We need to bring in even more gray blocks so we can paint them red, and there we go, we have the first gray blocks arriving. I'm just using the same carriers, by the way, now alternating between different stations, but of course I am adding more and more stations. Specifically, I took it from these locations over here in the bottom. This is a really annoying island to build anything on, so I might as well just use it for some raw materials. I'm slowly running out of space to build, which is also quite obviously needed because we are getting near the end of the game. So all we now have left to do is build a GNN data mine so we can start producing some red science and then unlock the GNN gate itself. So I'm just bringing in the same materials that we've made on the previous island, including some coolant, and let's see what we have to do this time around. Honestly, it doesn't look too complicated. The main difference is that we need to add in some red stuff. And I actually just realized I'm importing in everything except for the red blocks. Hold on. Okay, there we go. This is only half of what we actually have in production in terms of red cubes, but I think it's gonna be plenty. So, let's see. Let's pin all of these and let's take a look at this. This is going to be 128 voxels, so that's 2 belts. 96 and 32, so we have 4 belts in total. So if I'm gonna be lazy, I might just as well use 4 belts of red cubes, because we are probably not going to need much more, and work with that. Okay, so taking a closer look at this thing, actually we might just want to use one of our blue belts for this, because it's exactly just 4 slices of a red block underneath, and then everything else is either gray or black. So it feels kind of wasteful, to be honest, to do it any other way. And the nice thing is this is just a 4x4 piece over here. Then there's another 4x4 piece, another 4x4 piece. So all in all, this is a very straightforward thing to make. Let's slice the first block in 4, then we can divide those up into 4 pieces. Then we can start to recombine those. I think we will be just fine. Let's just keep it as it is. Let's not even worry about rotation. Once we have those, we can't, I don't think we can at least combine them in this thing in the way I want, because that will be too large, right? Yeah, so we need another thing for that. So let's worry about the other items first. For that part, we are going to do the same slicing and dicing as before. Let's make sure it actually does something. However, we are going to have to move these up because we are going to need to slice them once more. To be exact, we are going to slice them into the 2x2 pieces. We're gonna have to do some painting in there as well, but let me just make this first. There we go. Yeah, so now what? We need some of them to be white, and we need a couple of things to be black. We might as well just, hold on, let's do it like this. Let's paint, I don't know, this black. How many black and white pieces do we need? I think it's about equal, right? Yeah, so it doesn't actually matter. Well, in that case, let's make it symmetric. Hold on, let's make it beautiful. Let's make it beautiful, beautiful. Let's make it black over here. Let's copy that. Let's set this to white, and let's have that over here. That should work at an optimal speed. And then everything that this is going to poop out should have the right colors. Yep. And then all we need to do is start combining those. So we can actually do this. Let's do this. And then this. And then this is going to go like so. Ooh, that's already too large. Right, what we can do... Now I need to do math. Hold on. This. Okay, so that's gonna be the black pieces, this, and this. And then this piece, we can do the same thing. We should be able to make that just fine, like this. All we need to do is just stack these up. Let's do the same thing over here, and then we stack these up as well. There we go. There we go. That's nice. So then we have 3 pieces over here. So actually we are going to need an advanced assembler. Let's do that like this and like this. Let's start using some of the coolant that we have over here. And then if we do it like this, no, hold on. We need to rotate this, right? I'm challenged here. There we go. That's how we should do it. Okay. That's gonna be like that. It's gonna be the other way around, but that doesn't matter for now in the orientation. Okay. So we are gonna bring this back. Hold on. Let's bring it back over here like this. And then we have this and this. And then we need another one of those advanced assemblers like this. I really wish there was a way to set up the coolant automatically somehow. I don't know. And then all we need to do... I really hope I didn't make a silly mistake now. Is this? And this. And new module created. 1 down, 2 to go. Okay, the other 2 pieces I think we have to make together. Let's see. If we look at this one, you can see it's like the 4x4 black pieces, and then those are on all sides. So these aren't actually like blocks we need to hollow out. It's just a black piece that we need to stitch back together, and then we need to plug in some red pieces from a different belt. So this is where the additional voxels are coming from. And I think that, let's see. So this is actually half the amount. Just half a belt of red. Yeah. Half a block of red, I should say. So this is another quarter of a block. So we can actually make this piece plus the red pieces here out of a red belt. And then we just need some other colored belt in order to make the black pieces for this. So yeah, that should be pretty straightforward. Alright, so this time around, let's start with painting something black, and then I think we can... Oh, I think we can actually just use this thing, right? Almost this thing. Yeah, just place that down. Now, we do want to reset this recipe because we are making something different. However, we should be able to make that in this machine, I think. So, this is just this. That's one. And we actually need that in the other machine as well. And then we can use another assembler to take one of those and then have the other one. Is it like this? No, right? Well, yeah. Yeah, that should be it. I think. Famous last words, of course. Now, let's see. Then we go and take this build. We don't need to, hold on, we don't need to paint anything here, but we do need to cut everything to smaller pieces. And there we go. So we can use that again. It's actually super similar to the first item. Okay, then we have those smaller pieces. Why are you not working? Oh, you are working, that is fine. So I am going to need 60, 60... Yeah, so all I need to do is this and this. And then that and that. And why are you turn? That's weird. Okay, so like that. That was the weirdest way I've ever built that, okay, but okay. Let's see, and then... we need to do it like this, and it needs to be one up. I think this is right. It's always a little hard to visualize this stuff, but I think I'm doing it correctly. And then if we do this, and I take this and this should just plug in. No, getting it to plug in. Haha. Yes. I love it when a plan comes together. Yes, I'm old. Anyway. If you got that reference, you are old as well. Or you're very hip and you watch good old shows. Anyway, let's see. Now we still need to make this. So we have way too many of these things, I think. But let's just do some more assembling, I guess. So we are going to assemble this. And that's going to be that piece that we need. We are actually going to need to paint some stuff white. So let's put this to white. Let's copy that. Let's move that. We're actually going to... hold on. We actually have to cut that up as well, because we need the smaller pieces. And then what we need to do is this. And then we need to put this on here. There we go. Then we need to reassemble that again. I'm making my own life a lot harder than it needs to be, but okay. I can't actually do that in here. Hold on. I need to bring this out. I need to bring that out. Hold on. Hold on. There we go. We are going to need an advanced assembler to do that. So once again, for that thing to actually do anything, we need to hook it up. There we go. And then we should be able to just complete it now, right? So we turn this around and we slot that in over there. We put that up here, and that should be a new module created. Very nice. So that means that we now have all four modules, or all three modules, I mean, for this build over here. And we should have it at the exact ratio that we needed as well. Well, at least if you are going for 60 per second. I could, in theory, scale this up, but the ratios come out really nicely like this. So let me kind of shift everything back together again so it's a little bit smaller. And while this is building, we should be able to start making some science as well. And there we go. This build is actually kind of nice and cute, and it's almost a throwback to the Grey Science because of the size and the simplicity. Anyway, the GNN data mine is now making 20 of the red data stacks per minute. That sounds decent. It's obviously not a lot, but it sounds okay until you realize that the data center itself that turns it into the actual science that we need is only going to do that at a 4:1 ratio. So all I need to do right now is hook up a data shard salvager. I can use the yellow science to put in here, but yeah, this is going to consume 20 of the 30 yellow science that I'm currently making per second, per minute, I mean. That's not a lot. So this is gonna take a minute. Luckily, we don't need that much, but we still need 120. So it's gonna take a fair few minutes for me to get that science up and running. But yeah, anyway, we do have red science flowing now, and that means that the grand neural network has contacted us again. Red data shard received. This knowledge operates near the limits of your current framework. Proceed carefully. Expansion is most stable when it's deliberate. Well, yeah. And speaking of deliberate, now I know, because I can see that over here, that I am supposedly able to upgrade this further, which would raise this to 30 per minute. So duplicating this build is actually not what I want to do. Now, I was considering, should I upgrade my yellow science to make everything faster? Maybe. But instead of doing that, the alternative is to actually make our last build the GNN overclock station, because this is supposedly going to give me a production boost. And I have all the required materials that I need right here on this island, so I can actually just, if this works like I think it does, it's just going to expand the production that comes out of your buildings on this island, wherever you build this. Now, obviously, doing that at the end of your production chain is by far the most efficient, because that would literally just double the red science production we have. Wow, this is definitely a colorful block, and because I don't want to paint anything in my builds, I'm gonna have to use pretty much all the different resources that I have. Now, let's start with the red one, because we need the most of that, and then we can probably have some of the remainder be painted in a different color, because as it seems, we actually don't need that many resources. This is just a total of, what is it? Just 2 full belts of stuff. The only reason that I'm going to use more is because, like I said, I don't want to repaint stuff. But I think if we have a full belt of red, we are going to come a very long way. So what I want to do is cut everything up. So that is what we use this thing for. I am once again going to align it once we're done. So this is going to split everything up. Then we are going to need... let's see. We are going to need not that much of this, actually. So we can mirror this for the black and the red pieces, I think. Let's use a stamper to stamp out the middle section over here. There. And then we can bring that right back, because what we want to do is put this in a assembler, and then put that, where are you flying? There you go. Put that over there. Probably down here though, but we'll see. This is already a piece of this. Now on the other side, we can do the same thing. Hold on. However, let's keep it symmetric, because you know how I like that. Well, let's move this over a little bit, because what we need to do, this one can stay like that, but this one we actually need to paint black. So now we have this thing fixed as well. Now, what do we do about this? So we have... interesting. It's a little annoying, to be fair. Hold on. Let me do it like this and this, so that I can use this outer piece. And now, what's the smartest way of doing this? It probably doesn't really matter. But I think it's gonna be this. I mean, we have plenty of space at this point. There you go. Okay. So, hold on. We are gonna stamp this out. Right. And then the interesting thing is, this piece will actually become the second piece that we need to have over there. Is it? Oh man, I'm racking my brain over here. So if I split this up, this will become like this half, right? Yes. Ooh, hold on. Let me think about this for a moment. Okay, I'm back again. The thing that was frying my brain was that if we have this producing at 60 per minute, we would need to have this producing at 120 per minute because we need twice as much, but that doesn't really math out quite nicely. And actually, as it turns out, it won't math out anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm actually wondering if we need to supply this with a constant flow of stuff, and if so, how many? So we're gonna have to figure that out anyway. So let me do this. That is going to make the pieces that we need. And then we are going to need to split this up because we are going to have to do quite a bit of recoloring. This is going to be white, like that. And then that piece is going to go with that piece. So that's one done. And then we need to copy this entire thing. Apparently I am now extremely bad at copying things. There we go. And in this case, hold on, we need you to be black. And we need you to be black. Reset. There we go. We probably didn't even have to reset that, to be honest, but okay. There we go. Then that's the second piece that we need. Then we need to bring you down to here and you down to there. And then we should be able to just combine these. So we have it's oriented in such a way that it's easier to follow. There we go. That should be it, right? Alrighty. So this will be producing at 60 per minute, which is fine, which is probably what we want anyway. Then we need to bring in these things over here. Not like that. Come on. Like that. There we go. Okay. Then this is going to go... Hello? Oh, I just destroyed my other belt. Hold on. That's not how that works, TDA. Okay. Let's do it like that then. And now we can make the nice little square. There you go. And that square then needs to... Oh man, this is going to be a little bit annoying. Okay, hold on. It's gonna be fine. It's just not gonna be the most elegant build we've ever made. Okay. So, that's probably also not a problem because we also have to bring in a couple more colors for the other half. But anyway, what we do need to do is split these up. So we might as well do that here. Yeah, let's bring this down a little bit so we have room to work with. Because one of the parts needs to be black. Like that. And then the other piece needs to be just red, so that's fine. Let's delete that for the moment. Let's put those together like this. That's one half. And then this piece needs to go all the way over here. Oh man, this is not the prettiest build. I'm not sure if we can even clean this up just because of how the belts are running. But anyway, there you go. So now we have this piece and we have that piece. So really all we need to do is slice up some blue and yellow blocks and put those in as well. Alright, so we sliced them up once, we sliced them up again, and we're just throwing away a lot of resources at this point because like I said, I don't want to be painting inside the build. And at that point, all we need to do is this, I think. Let's bring that back. And this is gonna have to have 4 in between, and that's it. And we do the same thing for the yellow one. And then we are gonna have to stitch all of this together. So let me do this like this. Let's have an advanced assembler. Do we still... Yeah, I was about to say, do we still have... Hold on. Can you connect to anything? No. You are not connected to anything yet, so that's great. You and you. And you. There we go. And then of course we also have, where's the last piece? That's this one. Can bring that in over there. Then we need another one of you with a different recipe, of course. And we also need to hook that up to the coolants. There we go. But this is going to be super straightforward. Assuming it wants to fall in place. Because that is another new module created. Now this is only going to be producing at 30 per minute because of the combination of these. These are going to be producing at 60. Actually, this is also going to be producing at 60 then. Oh, right, but we're using half of that for something else. So, yeah, 30 per minute, so we only need 2 cranes to handle this. And that should mean we can build our overclock station now. Okay, and of course it's always good to double check if whatever you're doing is correct, because the answer in my case is no. So I forgot that I'm producing a total of 240 of these squares over here, and I can't actually put that through a monotoner because there's 120 on each belt. I can also not paint it in front of here. Can I? Oh yeah, I should be able to do that. If I do it like this, this is now split in such a way that it should be, there we go, 60-60. So if we now paint them, everything should be working like it should, and that pretty much just doubles the production of this, which means this is actually going to be producing at the rate it should. It's interesting because it is actually, look, we have the overclock online apparently. Do I need to do anything with this? Modules needed. So it is operational? Okay. So it's getting in 30 per minute of that, yes. And 60 per minute of that, yes. And that just means it's operational. That is kind of awesome. And then I can use some yellow signs to start upgrading it and increase the overclock capacity even further. And would you look at that? That's quite a colorful building. Anyway, that is going to overclock everything at 100% now. It took a couple of upgrades, and to be fair, a fair amount of red science, which I'm of course only producing at a trickle, so felt a little bit bad to wait for that. But look, we have multiple red science things coming out at the same time now, and this thing is now producing at 60 per minute, which honestly is more than what we have yellow signs production for, but luckily we have 4,000 yellow signs to spare, so that's not going to be too much of a problem. I could also build this thing on the yellow signs island as well, assuming I have space for that, and the answer is probably not. No, that would be, I think it's here, right, where we're producing it. Yeah, I don't think we are going to be able to stick that in here somewhere. Of course, you could just produce the modules on a different island and then have that ported over to this island, and then just have the overclock device up here getting fed those items that you're producing somewhere else. So if you're running out of space, that is one way to do it. But honestly, at this point, I think I'll just stick around for a few minutes and wait for the signs that I need to be produced, so we can unlock the GNN gate and work from there. And there we go, 120 science of the red kind. Ooh, okay. The GNN gate can be built only after all 3 monuments are charged, which opens the input gates. Construction happens in 4 phases, each requiring more complicated modules. Each phase has 5 floors unlocked through upgrades. Completing all floors starts the next phase, adding an extra module requirement. Tip: don't wait to begin construction, this is a mammoth task. Okay, well in that case, I think this is gonna have to be an entire episode on its own. I actually thought this was the end of the game, like we built the gate and we were done, but the final form of the boss has appeared for us apparently. So, if you're still here, you're awesome, and this is kind of awesome as well, so definitely hope to catch you in the next one.